another episode of George on Sports with me, your host, George Egator, and I'm glad to be speaking today to JJ Stankevitz, the official Colts.com writer once again. JJ, first and foremost, how are you?
I'm good. Definitely a busy week around here so far here in Indianapolis, but happy to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll kick things straight off the back with the Colts loss to the Commanders. I mean, wow. You know, we get Shaq Leonard back and, you know, Sam Ehlinger gets his first start after Matt Ryan, you know, goes down injured and pretty much I don't think plays for the Colts again. Could be wrong there. But, I mean, it looked like, you know, Sam was okay, made some plays. And essentially, we kind of gave up the lead in the last 10 minutes of the game. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm kind of speechless, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was certainly surprising because the Colts all year had struggled to get out to two-score leads. All of a sudden, you find yourself up 16-7 in the fourth quarter and aren't able to hold that lead. That was the source of a lot of frustration from the players I talked to in the locker room after the game that, you know, we had been trying to do this all year. We finally got it, and then we couldn't hold it. And it goes into a number of factors on that. You know, kind of just a little game of inches. You know, if Sam Ehlinger, he picks up an extra inch on the scramble he hit on third down, you know, the Colts maybe get a fresh set of downs, maybe keep moving the ball, maybe take the air out of the ball and don't give Washington a chance to even come back and possess the ball again. You know, then you get a fourth down late in the game where the defense is not able to get a stop. Taylor Heineke escapes some pressure, gets outside the pocket to his right, finds Curtis Samuel, that drive starts to get going, and then it comes down to a 50-50 ball where Terry McLaurin wound up winning it somehow over Stephon Gilmore, and they go down, they punch in the game-winning touchdown, and then, you know, Michael Pittman Jr. can't haul in that pass from Sam Ehlinger, and all of a sudden you find yourself losing 17-16 in a game that wasn't pretty, but you feel pretty good about just with the way that Sam played, the way he operated the offense. The defense did a really good job, especially on third down in this game. And to not come away with a win, you know, certainly felt like a pretty big gut punch.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd say our defense have kept us in and won us a couple of our games so far. So kind of, you know, losing to the Commanders in the way we did, you've mentioned some of the key factors there, it's really painful to watch, really painful to watch, you know, especially when you get guys like Shaq back. I think it's clear to see we're missing Quick Pay still, who's still out injured. But I mean, credit to Taylor Heineke because some of the plays that he made when he escaped the pocket were really good. And you mentioned Terry McLaurin, who was an Indiana boy at heart, you know, so for him, this was like a homecoming and he just happened to steal the game away from us. But on that note, you know, there's been a lot of talk about being on the hot seat, Frank Reich being on the hot seat, even Chris Ballard as well. I always say Colts fans, I feel like we're the kind of fans where we don't make too much noise. You know, we take what we're given. We don't do crazy things like the Bills and all that kind of stuff. But recently, I think there's been a lot of noise. And I think with you know, I think we have it entitled to kind of feel that way because it almost feels a little bit like we're slightly directionless. And by that, I mean, it seems like, you know, we don't really know which way we're headed. A lot of people and the critics and NFL analysts have been questioning the moves that we've made, both from a Frank Reich level play calling all the way up to Chris Ballard. What's your take on where we go next as a franchise? Because I try to get my head around it. I mean, we've still got pieces like JT, Michael Pittman Jr. Paris Campbell has been looking great, but we just don't seem as a franchise to know what we want to do next.
Well, I think this is a difficult place to be in for a franchise that really thought coming into this year it was not going to look like this. You know, and there have been some things that certainly have not been up to the standard that has been set in this building. So right now at 3-4-1, you know, no one in this room, no one in this building is throwing away this season. You know, I know some folks might think, all right, you know, going to Sam Ehlinger, trading Nyheim Hines, that's waving the white flag. That's not what this is about. And there's still a lot of guys in that locker room who are going to be competitive this year, who are going to try to win games for the Colts. But ultimately, it has to happen soon. You know, Ryan Kelly said it after the game. It's expletive or get off the pot right now for this team. And they need to figure out, can this still be a winning team in 2022 with Sam Ehlinger as their quarterback, with some of the changes you're going to see on offense? Obviously, Marcus Brady being relieved of his duties on Tuesday. Nyheim Hines going to Buffalo later in the day. There are going to be some changes there, going to be some different things that you're going to see. But I think ultimately, if you zoom out on this, what the Colts are going to find out the rest of the season is what direction they're going to be taking going forward at the quarterback position. Sam Ehlinger is going to have an opportunity to get 10 starts under his belt. That is a large sample size to evaluate what kind of quarterback he can be for this team. Can he be their quarterback in 2023? Can he still be the starter next year? Or do the Colts need to go make a move to go get another starting quarterback? Maybe that's a young starting quarterback drafted high that we have not seen come through Indianapolis since Andrew Luck in 2012. Maybe that's the direction they take. But right now, I think it's okay for the Colts to not have that direction. That will sort itself out come January 7th or 8th, whenever the season ends. We'll know, I think, by the end of the year what direction this franchise and this organization is going to take for the next couple of years.
I think, like you mentioned, it's one of those things that it's just shocking because, like you say, I don't think, myself included, and probably of a Colts fan, we just didn't see this coming. We really didn't. And yes, to be fair, we've kind of found ourselves in a QB carousel since Andrew Luck retired. But that, each player to their own. You respect what they would like to do, and if they want to retire, that's completely fine. But I think we've just got to that point, like you say, where we need to make a definitive decision, and if that's come at the end of the season after we've evaluated Sam. Whether we, stick with Sam or go elsewhere, we just need to know which way we're headed. You mentioned OC Marcus Brady, who's obviously been relieved of his duties, and now I believe Frank will take over offensive coordinator duties. What kind of, some people see this as it's the last straw for Frank. In terms of, let's see what you can do now that you kind of have the reins. But I know Frank has been play calling in the first place, and yes, there have been some questions around certain plays. I think we were in a 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and we were in shotgun in the game against the Commanders, which has been talked about over and over again. But Marcus Brady being relieved of his duties, do you see this being a positive step for Frank or a positive step for the Colts, or are we just looking for some shift in the building?
George, it's never a positive when someone loses their job. You could tell this was a pretty difficult decision for Frank Reich for the Colts. Marcus Brady's been here since 2018, since Frank got hired, and has been a trusted confidant of the head coach here in Indianapolis. But ultimately, when the execution on offense has not been there, especially in some of these situations where, the Colts against Washington, they had 6 drives to get inside the 30. They only scored 1 touchdown, 2 turnovers, 3 field goals in those situations. Ultimately, it's not good enough, and you have to take really hard looks at everyone on this team. The Colts already did that at quarterback. Now they do it at offensive coordinator, to try to fix it. Because this is a team, George, that they can move the ball. It's almost kind of mind-boggling. I looked this up yesterday. The Colts are 12th in average yards per play when they are in their own territory. They're 31st in average yards per play as soon as they cross the 50 into opponent territory. Wow. Those two things should not be that far apart, right? But for whatever reason they are, and the Colts are now there. We're just trying to find ways to get those numbers to be closer together, to get them to be closer to 12th in average yards per play when they get into opponent territory where you really make your money and you really score your points. Those have got to be considerations going forward, but we'll see. I don't know how much of the offense is going to look different. You just hope that the execution is better going forward, no matter what moves are being made.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, we're good at moving the ball, which we are, but that brings me to the deadline, the trade deadline, where we obviously sent away Nyheim Hines, which is a huge fan favorite. All the forums and pages that I've been reading, especially here in the UK, quite a lot of people are very upset about that one. Being traded to the Bills for a 6th round pick, potentially a 5th round pick, and in return Zach Moss. So that gives us Jonathan Taylor, Deion Jackson, and Zach Moss. We heard rumblings about Hines potentially being traded, even perhaps Kenny Moore, who tweeted and deleted something after the game. But I think first things first, the NFL is a business, right? And we know that how that works, and it's next man up sort of thing. And NFL is always in the win yesterday mode. The Nyheim Hines trade, I think, for me, yes, it's very upsetting because, he's a great guy, a fan favorite, and I wish him all the best at the Bills. But I get the sense, with the contract he was on and the production we received, those two things, kind of like how you mentioned about the, yards in our own half and yards in opposition half, they just don't match up. So it sounds like, a bit of a business negotiation to me.
Yeah, it's exactly right, George. You have to take the business side of this into account that, Nyheim Hines signed a contract extension last year, and that contract is now being picked up by Buffalo. They're in year one of I believe it was a 3-year contract extension. So that's now going over to Buffalo, and the Colts now will have a little bit more money next offseason, to kind of throw in if they're going to get extensions done with a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. or to play in the free agency pool or in the trade pool to go get an impact player. But it definitely, it stinks. Nyheim Hines, like you said, George, he is a fan favorite here. He is part of the fabric of this organization and has been since he came in as a 4th-round pick in 2018. And losing a guy like that who is a good locker room guy, good teammate, that stinks. It does. But you have to look at what is best for the Indianapolis Colts as a franchise, not just in the, man, I wish we could have got Nyheim going. It's in the long term of this franchise and what is going to be coming down the road. The one thing I keep going back to, George, is there's all this discourse about, did the Colts properly use Nyheim Hines? Did they do that? I think Nyheim is a really good weapon to have if the rest of your offense is clicking. Yeah. If you've got JT rolling, you've got the offensive line getting it done and giving time to the quarterback, and he's able to pick out Michael Pittman Jr. or Paris Campbell or Alec Pierce, and then you kind of sprinkle in a little bit of Nyheim in there with the playmaking ability he has. The Colts offense this year, they're 30th in points scored at 16.1 points per game, and Nyheim Hines, for as good of a player as he is, it's hard to build an offense around Nyheim Hines. It really is. Him going to Buffalo is a great fit for the Buffalo Bills because they have everything rolling on offense. You have the quarterback in Josh Allen. You have an elite, top-level, proven veteran wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. You have, weapons like Gabriel Davis on that team that are really explosive. And then you kind of just drop Nyheim in there for 10 plays a game maybe, 10, 20 plays a game, and all of a sudden that's a great weapon for the Bills to have. I get why Buffalo would want to do that. I also get why the Colts would say, that's the price, what we thought we were going to be with Nyheim is not what we are, and the price for Nyheim is a little bit high for where we are as a team right now. So then you go and you try to recoup a draft pick for it. We'll see what those conditions wind up being and how it comes out. And then you also save some money against the cap going into next year. And, getting Zach Moss back, I know Colts fans don't want to hear it, but Zach Moss is a functional NFL football player who is good at certain things. I tweeted this out yesterday, George, and I got a bunch of stick on Twitter because people are like, what are you doing with this? But Zach Moss is one of the best pass-protecting running backs in the NFL. I know that's a small part of what you expect a running back to do, but the Colts have had some issues in protection this year, and Zach Moss has played 115 pass blocking snaps and has not allowed his quarterback to be hit or sacked at all in his career. So that's just one little thing. Hey, all right, we can throw Zach Moss in there for 7 or 8 third downs a game and trust that he's going to get the protection right. He's going to block the guy he needs to, and he's going to keep Sam Ehlinger clean. That's important. It's not getting 25-yard gash gains, but it's not like Zach Moss is just like some throw-in useless player. He is a good NFL player who the Colts are getting back in return. Again, I know no one wants to hear that right now because everyone just wants to react emotionally to this trade, which I get. Nyheim Hines, again, fan favorite, good dude, good locker room guy. But I get it. I get why the Colts did this. And I'm trying to say that in like a hushed voice because I know a lot of people don't. I get it. I get why you would do this.
Yeah, you are right. Like I said, the natural reaction has been, why Zach Moss? People say he didn't do much at Buffalo, but you've mentioned one of the key things as a running back is not just the touchdowns and the great explosive runs, but it is the blocking. And if you can block as a running back, you are very, very favorable in the NFL. But you mentioned something about protection, which brings me on to a question that we've had from a UK Colts fan. There's a few here, but one of the questions they wanted to put to you, JJ, is, why do you think our O-line has gone from one of the best to one of the worst almost instantly? Sometimes you see a slight decline, but ours seems to have happened overnight, and that's from Paul James.
I have no idea. I really don't. I think every year is different for an offensive line with personnel and with, obviously here in Indianapolis with the quarterback. And for whatever reason, this year it has not come together with that 5-as-1 mentality. The thing that has surprised me the most is just the difficulty the Colts have had picking up some stunts and working with some overload fronts this year, where Jacksonville in week 2, they kind of laid out the blueprint for how to get to this offensive line, and teams have just been doing it all season. And, you know, when you get these guys in just pure one-on-one pass blocking situations, you know, they haven't been a disaster. Braden Smith's been pretty good. Quentin Nelson's had some good games. Ryan Kelly's had some good games. You know, Dennis Kelly has had some good games, good moments since he stepped in, but it hasn't been that 5-as-1 cohesion that I think we've just come to take for granted here in Indianapolis over the last couple of years. I don't have a good answer for why that hasn't happened, frankly. It's something that the Colts are going to have to take a look at and are taking a look at, but will continue to take a look at throughout this season and then into the offseason of why the pass protection has not been up to the standard that has been set here over the last couple of years.
Okay, we'll move on to another question from Sam Hatch, and his question to you is, internally, do the Colts still genuinely believe that we're 1 or 2 pieces away from a championship? And what was the rationale behind the Hines trade? It seems a head-scratcher. Now, you kind of already answered the Hines question, so I suppose, are we 1 or 2 pieces away from a championship still, or is it deeper than that?
I think this team feels like they're 1 or 2 plays away. It's not even, you know, adding in another piece. It's just like, if you execute 1 or 2 more plays a game, then we're talking about a different season right now.
Yeah.
You know, you think about in Houston in week 1, if Rodrigo Blankenship makes that field goal, okay, there's a win instead of a tie. You go back to week 4 against the Titans where Jonathan Taylor fumbles. Maybe, you know, the way that game was going, Tennessee wasn't going to score again in that game. Maybe the Colts go down, they tie it, they win it late or in overtime. So that could be flipped from a loss to a win. You think about the game in Tennessee in week 7, where if you execute on that pick 6 and, you know, Matt Ryan does not throw an interception there, that game could go completely differently. You think about then in week 8, all the opportunities the Colts had against Washington to go down and score a touchdown. Nyheim Hines said after the game, hey, if we score 1 more touchdown, we're not having this conversation about a loss. And he was right about that. So you think there are probably like really 3 or 4 more wins that the Colts could have pulled off if they had execution to the level that they expected coming into the season. And you think about that, I mean, this team could be really, you know, you could be looking at a 6-2 team right now, potentially.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that the offense has just generally not played up to the standard they need to play at this year. So, yeah, you can say, okay, you're 1 or 2 plays away, but ultimately, when you're only scoring 16 points a game, those 1 or 2 plays then carry outsized significance, and you lose your margin for error where you can't overcome those things. Yeah. So the Colts that's why you're trying to fix whatever you can on this offense. You're trying to get that part right. So you don't need 1 or 2 plays to go right. You know, you don't need, like, you think about games where those plays have gone right. Jacksonville in week 6 where Matt Ryan finds Alec Pierce for the game-winning touchdown. You know, week 5 where Stephon Gilmore comes up huge twice in that game. Mm-hmm. Week 3 where Stephon Gilmore, again, comes up huge in that game. Jelani Woods comes up huge in that game. The Colts have done that, but when your margin for error is those 2 plays decide a game, usually that's a recipe for you to be about a 500 team and to be a little bit underwhelming if you can't, because when you have to rely so much on those pivot points, again, it's just hard to win in the NFL when those plays carry such significance.
Yeah, and you mentioned Stephon Gilmore when we last spoke during training camp. You mentioned how effective and on show Gilmore was, and he, you know, one of the players who has certainly carried that through into the season. A couple of more questions. This one is from Ben Phillips. How many more of the coaching staff do you think or should think should be replaced? A bit of a difficult question there. Obviously, we've seen Marcus Brady, who's already been relieved of his duties, but do you potentially see any more? I mean, again, it's a hard question because, you know, there's a number of things that need attention.
I don't think you'll see the Colts jettison any more coaching staff members during the season. That is not Frank Reich's MO. This is the first in-season coaching change he has made since he became the Colts head coach. I would be surprised if you would see another one between now and the end of the season. That just, again, it's not what Frank's MO is, and if the offense does start clicking, then certainly you're not going to see anything between now and January.
Okay. And last question before we talk about something else. This is from Simon Drew. Did Sam Ehlinger show enough to suggest that he could be the QB going forward into next season, or do we think that we need to take a first rounder in the draft?
I think it's too early to tell. The good news is just baseline. Sam Ehlinger did not look like the moment was too big for him in his first career start. He handled what Washington was doing defensively pretty well. The operation of the offense was good. I talked to Ryan Kelly about that Sam got the Colts in and out of plays. He got the right checks in, he got the right kills in, he got the right protections in. That's all very encouraging. And then as the game went on, you saw him start to take some of those shots downfield and create those explosive plays. So overall, just an encouraging debut. It's not like he lit the world on fire, but I don't think anyone expected him to. Certainly the game plan was not for Sam Ehlinger to go light the world on fire. But we'll see over the next 9 games here that will Sam Ehlinger continue to trend upward to the point where you get to the end of the season and you say, okay, yeah, we can probably win with this guy. Or get to the end of the season and say, all right, we now have a platform to go take a quarterback in the first round. Maybe we try to go do that. That's going to be a really interesting thing to see play out over the last 9 games of the season. Isn't just for can the Colts get back into the playoff race in the AFC. It's can Sam Ehlinger develop into a guy who you can go into next year saying, yeah, we will absolutely ride with this guy as our starting quarterback because he's earned it.
Yeah. And I mean, it speaks volumes as to the state of the actual, the AFC South itself, but the league in general. I think I saw a stat recently about, we're on record for like the lowest number of points scored in quite a while. And you're seeing teams such as the Packers, teams that should be doing well and should be winning, but obviously, they've had off-season moves, like the Devontae Adams and the Tyreek Hill move, and certain teams just aren't the same and they're not performing as well. But on that note, you mentioned Sam Ehlinger making plays, so we're going to move over to something slightly more positive in some of our rookies who are doing really well. Not only our rookies, but some of our veteran players too. And I want to start with Alec Pierce, a wide receiver who I loved when we drafted, and we spoke again in training camp about him and how Reggie had nothing but praise for him. He really looked like he's come into his own, and someone that isn't afraid to go up and get it, has the speed, has the awareness of where the ball is, and someone that can work really well opposite Michael Pittman Jr., who tends to come underneath with those slant routes. He looks like he's coming on really well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, George. That pairing of Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. looks really strong and can be really strong for the next couple of years here in Indianapolis because Alec, like you mentioned, he's that outside the numbers ball winner. And that is such a good compliment to Michael Pittman Jr., who does so much damage as kind of that slasher over the middle, between the numbers, between the hashes. And Alec, I think his development has even been a little more accelerated than the Colts even thought. They thought coming into the year he was going to be ready. But some of the details that Alec is playing with, even like on his game-winning touchdown, this is something I was talking about with Bill Brooks. He's a Ring of Honor wide receiver here in Indianapolis. We do a podcast together after every game. After every game, we do it every Sunday night. And Bill was saying that on that touchdown against Jacksonville, Alec has a great release. It's super clean. He doesn't rush through it. But then after his release, he gets back into his stack, which means he gets essentially back with his route to where he lined up. So you could just draw a straight line from where Alec caught that ball to where he lined up. He didn't drift toward the sideline. Some receivers, if you're not on your details, you will drift toward the sideline, and all of a sudden now that 50-50 ball becomes a more advantageous ball for the defense to go make a play and knock it away or make a play on the ball. Yeah. Alec did such a good job on that play of knowing exactly where he needed to be. And those little details, those are things that sometimes receivers, it takes them a year or two to pick it up. But Alec is getting them now, and that gives the Colts so much confidence about the kind of player he can be going forward. I don't think anyone should look for Alec Pierce to be, a 1,200-yard receiver as a rookie. But there are these little kernels that he's dropping, these little breadcrumbs of saying this guy is going to be a really good wide receiver in Indianapolis for a long time. And again, that pairing with Michael Pittman Jr. looks really strong. And then we'll see, with Paris Campbell, he'll be a free agent after this year. But the stuff Paris has been doing consistently has been very impressive and is something that, for Sam Ehlinger, it's whatever he does this year will not be for a lack of weapons around him. When you think about those 3 wide receivers, you think about Jonathan Taylor as your running back, and then some of the work that the Colts tight ends have done, Kylan Granson, Jelani Woods, have been really strong in the pass game at times this year. Mo Alley Cox too. So, again, it's not for lack of weapons around Sam Ehlinger, which definitely then helps with the evaluation of him going into next year.
Paris is someone I'm glad you mentioned because, as we know, he's struggled over the last 3 or 4 years with back-to-back injuries, never really been able to get it going. I think we did see like a really good deep ball play when he was with Carson Wentz last season, where I think he hit him for, I think it was over a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
so we know
Houston,
what he can do. That's the one, Houston. He's basically taken up the T.Y. Hilton role where he normally, does damage against the Houston Texans. So it's now Paris Campbell. But I'm just very happy to see that because again, he's a very, very good athlete, a great wide receiver, complements what we do with the other guys, Pierce and MPJ too. So I'm going to look ahead. We face the Patriots next at home. I think it was week 14 or week 15 last year, Thursday Night Football, where, Jonathan Taylor sealed the deal with that to the house call, which, I remember watching that game sort of 3 a.m, and the next day I just couldn't stop smiling. I was just so happy. The Patriots have their own thing going on. They've got their quarterback debate with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi and who's going to do what. They've got a good running game and Ramondre Stevenson and Harris, and they've got their weapons on the outside. Personally, every game is a must-win game for me. But knowing what Bill Belichick likes to do, we know he likes to take away, the opposition's strongest game, in which sense I believe would be our running game, although, we haven't really shown much of that this season. But this game for me is vital. Obviously, we're now having Frank Reich, who's running the offense in terms of being offensive coordinator. So maybe we see something slightly different in terms of how we approach this game, some of the play calls, some of the decisions, maybe when we're 4th and short, 3rd and short, or maybe when we go for field goals when we haven't been in the past. How important would you say this game is?
It's critical, George. It absolutely is, because you're facing an AFC opponent on the road, Bill Belichick coach team, and at 3-4-1, again, the time is now to start winning and winning consistently. So this got to be the first step toward it. And I think it's going to be really interesting, George, because you mentioned Bill Belichick is known for taking away the thing that you do best. Last year, he tried to do that with the Colts and Jonathan Taylor. Still ran all over the Patriots. Carson went through 12 passes in that game, completed 5 for 37 yards.
Yeah.
I'm interested what he tries to do in this game, though, because he's had success against young quarterbacks making starts early in their career. But an area where Belichick defenses have struggled is with mobile quarterbacks and guys who can get outside the pocket and create with their feet. I wonder if this is a game where Sam Ehlinger really showcases his ability to win with his legs. That's a question I have going into it. And then on top of that, can the Colts protect Sam Ehlinger, because you got Matt Judon, who's got 8.5 sacks.
Yeah.
Deatrick Wise is a really good player. They got some dudes on that defensive line. Christian Barmore. Can the Colts protect in this game when Sam does need to win from the pocket? Can they run block for Jonathan Taylor and kind of continue to create holes for him like they did last year? A lot of interesting questions in this game. And then on defense, that Patriots offense has had a lot of issues this year. Ramondre Stevenson can absolutely run it. But Mac Jones, 7 interceptions to 3 touchdowns this year. Is that something where, if Shaquille Leonard continues to take a greater share of the snaps, can he go make another play like he did in Week 8, like he did last year when he picked off Mac Jones in the red zone? That's going to be something to keep an eye on as well.
JJ, thank you so much again for coming on the show. I've wanted to set this up again, bearing in mind in particular how the Colts are panning out for this season. We spoke over earlier in the season in training camp, and to do this again now is always good, and hopefully we can do some more later down the line. I know I had a lot of people who wanted to ask some questions, and I couldn't get them all in. So guys, if you've got any questions, hopefully we'll do this again and we'll get JJ your questions. But until next time, you can find JJ at thecolts.com, where he's got all of his write-ups. He also has a podcast as well every Sunday, I believe, after the games.
Yep. Yeah, official, that's Colts Instant Reaction we do after every game, and then the official Colts podcast comes out on Tuesday on the Colts Audio Network. And yeah, happy to chat any day except November 25th with you, George. We're enemies that day.
Absolutely fair enough. And also, guys, you can find JJ on Twitter as well, where he posts a lot of information, obviously loads of Colts information, news, stories, and latest reactions too. Until then, it's been George on Sports. I've been your host, George Egator. Today, speaking to the Colts.com writer, JJ Stankevitz, and we'll see you soon.